Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? There you go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. I want to thank Jason for engineering the broadcast today. If you'd like to call us, we'll pay for the call, 866-582-9933. Telephone listen line, 605-477-3249. Doc Rams with us, Dr. Richard Allen Miller. Welcome, Rick!
The White House! It's just outside. I'm researching right now for today. I've heard something. I need to say this. A good friend of mine, and I'm now getting collaboration, says that there is going to be an attack in Europe, a European 9/11 next week. It's going to be most likely a nuclear warhead on Paris. And it's going to take the banking system down in Europe. And that's supposed to be happening this next week. Now, that's unconfirmed, but I have some serious friends in Europe that I've known for a long time that are dead on. And they, Olaf got, I got a friend in the Netherlands. I won't use his name, Olaf, but he's a good friend of mine. And I, when he says something to me, like we're going to talk about, and it's pronounced, by the way, that Genadikov. That's how you pronounce that Russian name, and how the axis flips. And I just posted a physical vision of how that physics works from NASA. We are on the event horizon. We're all here to witness something changing on Earth. And it's going to happen shortly.
And when it does, Rick, I think we're going to run out of blue, green, pink, violet, chartreuse, orange, and all the other unnatural hair colors. What are people going to do?
You mean a Gen X population? Yeah, there will be blood. If that's what you mean.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
There's we'll talk about the rising seas. When Al Gore, I knew Al Gore. He came physically to my home when Clinton was in Portland doing Spotted Owl. Spent 3 days with me in the Secret Service, whole thing. He wanted me to be on his cabinet. Tony Van Zandt, who was on his advisory board, said I was the best physicist there was to be used in agriculture. And I was going to be a Secretary of Agriculture. That's the plan. I was going to join the Good Old Boy Network, just like in Hit List, or what is it? Not the Hit List, but Blacklist. There it is. But unfortunately, I turned him down. We can talk about that later. But I'll tell you what, he's probably the first person that made a fortune on global warming, because that is not what's happening.
So when was this? Was this 1980?
Yeah, no, it was 1980. I want to say 1987 or 88, somewhere right in there. 70, yeah.
Okay,
when
Clinton was elected,
happened up in Portland, Clinton went in to close down the forest, and that's when logging was.
Clinton was.
I'm sorry.
Clinton was elected in 92.
Yeah. So it was right in that area, right? It's a long time ago. He came in.
Here's what. Yeah.
What's that?
Here's why I'm asking. I met Al Gore also. I was at a convention in Washington, D.C., back in 1980, specifically 1980. And Bert Bertonis and I and Andy Gibbs, two other instructors on USA Prepares, were at this convention. And we were unveiling our satellite communications technology. And this was the
By the way, it wasn't.
infancy.
It was 87 or 88, right at 1988. Yeah, that's when it was.
Okay.
Wanted me to be on his camera.
We were unveiling our satellite technology. We had some proprietary innovations, literally. Actually, they're revolutionary in the satellite communications industry. And we were able to convert gigahertz frequencies down to 70 megahertz. And you could connect your dish antenna with just plain old RG58U cable instead of Heliox, which is like the diameter of a quarter, I guess. And it was really, really interesting. And so Al Gore saw this, and there was lots of technology at this convention, but we had the most interesting, innovative technology that there was. And we had it at the lowest cost. And he invited us to join an organization called SPACE, SBACE, which stood for Society for Private and Commercial Earth Stations, meaning ground receivers, satellite receivers on the ground. And we didn't realize that what he was offering was riches, fantastic riches, because there was a guy, there was a satellite industry publication called Satellite TV Guide, and it was published out of Colorado, near Denver, every week. It was like TV Guide, but for satellite television. And Bert and Andy and I were on the front cover, or the front page, and inside the Satellite TV Guide was this guy by the name of Charlie Ergen. Ergen is the Dish Network guy. He joined SPACE, and he worked with Al Gore. He didn't even have a product. We actually had a product. You could buy it, use it. Ergen just had a concept, but Ergen was able to leverage his concept into dish-type network. And that's what he did. So I met Al Gore, and he wanted to charge us $25,000 to become a basic member of SPACE. Now, you could pay more. You could pay $100,000 and you'd be a real player in SPACE. But I was frosted that this guy wanted us to give him $25,000 a year when we couldn't afford the ketchup that was free with a McDonald's hamburger, because we were putting everything we had into our R&D, development, prototypes, and products. Nobody got paid in our company. The three of us just worked day and night, 7 days a week, 14, 15, 16-hour days, nonstop to build the products. And Al Gore wanted $25,000 a year of funds we didn't have. So that's my story with Al Gore, and you're absolutely right. He has figured out how to make money off other people, and he's brilliant at it. And let me tell you about SPACE. Here's my concept, and it was only a few years ago, several years ago, that I figured out what it was all about. It took me all this time. I'm talking almost 40 years to figure out what he was doing. So the idea was, he saw that we had technology that no one else had. We built it. We developed it. We invented it. I'm talking about the three of us, Bert and Andy and me. We invented it. And Al Gore saw that he could have meetings with us, and he could call us up and say, "Hey, Bert, so what are y'all up to? Anything cool?" And Bert could say, or Andy could say, or I could say, "Oh yeah, we invented, this new thing." And Al Gore could say to his buddies, "I'll tell you what, give me some money and I'll give you some stock tips. These guys have invented this new thing, and you can get it before it's announced, and you can make money on this." At the same, now, this is all conjecture, Al. So Al, when you're thinking about suing me, this is just my beliefs. Then I think he could take that same information and go to his buddies at the Department of Defense and say, hey, these guys invented this really cool thing. I think we should give them a grant and have them develop it faster, and we can use this to blow up more stuff on the planet. You know, like the military does.
Yeah, you're right. It was in 90, I think it was in 90, I had it wrong. It was in 96, I think, somewhere, 95. He, already, Clinton was in his second term. He'd gone to Portland on Spotted Owl, which I think started in 1990. And then they were closing down the forest and making the Kamiopsis wilderness area at that time, unapproachable. I was working out of the Trinity Alps up in Northern California, and I'd had something like, I really had gotten maybe 25 different grants, state, federal. I had USDA grants and other things, and I was working in agriculture. And I was when Clinton actually named the Secretary of Agriculture, I was in the president, in Illinois, I was in the governor's mansion drinking whiskey with a bunch of other people when the guy was elected. I was there because I was like one of Chuck Walter's pallbearers, so I was big time in agriculture at one time, really big. I mean, I was trying to balance trade deficits back then. Weird. Long time ago.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting how all this works.
Well, it's because Gore, he told me, he said this to me. He said, we should not focus on our agriculture. We should focus on high tech and let third world countries feed us. And I looked straight him in the eye and I said, what planet did you grow up on? I said, that's crazy. That is what has always given us the edge. And I know
that's what I thought. That's what I thought. I thought.
Well, that's the bottom line. I mean, and that's me saying it as a physicist, not an agriculturalist. And I am here to tell you, it's crazy. You don't focus on food. How's that work? Mm-hmm. It's like water.
Well,
it's basic.
When I was talking with him, he outdressed me. I mean, I had a nice suit on. There's images of it. If you can still find that satellite TV guide, you can see that I was dressed nicely. But he had the $1,000 suits on, back in 1980. So
yeah,
he had, yeah.
These are a different level of people.
And I was at this convention, and these were techies. These were people who could walk and talk this type of technology. And here comes this government guy. And my thought was, what the heck is he doing here? What could he possibly want to know about this? And I didn't realize this is how it works. And this is nothing new. I think this is always how it worked. I think Washington is a cesspool of criminality, a cesspool of me.
And that's right.
Of me
so
first.
I didn't vote for Trump. I voted against Clinton because I knew about Bundy Ranch. We're right down the street. And really, people don't get how bad it really, really is.
Now, hold that thought. We're going into a break. Rick Miller's with us. We'll be right back. Doc Ram's with us. Rick, I'd like to read something that's quite interesting and something we've been talking about, but someone else put an exclamation point on what we've been saying for several years now. It's from a website called rvtravel.com. The link to this particular page was sent to us by Joanne. She is one of our students in class on the East Coast. And the article says, and I'm going to quote the article starting now. What has happened to us that we are so angry? And it was written by Chuck Woodbury. Continues to say, I was very disheartened last Saturday by many of the remarks about our cover story, which I wrote. I will not even mention the subject for fear of stirring the pot again. More than 400 readers commented, an all-time high for this website. Many of those comments were just plain mean-spirited. Like many people, I'm saddened by the rudeness, the meanness of our society, where so many people are so disrespectful to those who they may disagree with their beliefs. I have written bylined essays for more than 3 decades. Before the internet, I received dozens of letters each week from my readers. They arrived in the mailbox. They were almost never rude. People disagreed with me often, but they did so with respect. Not anymore. Not with the internet. Liberals hate conservatives and conservatives hate liberals. My grandmother told me when I was a little boy to refrain from using the word hate unless I really meant it. I'm sorry, Grandma, for disobeying. In the 2 years, Gail and I have traveled full-time in our RV. We met 1,000 RVers. We sat around campfires. We joined together for evening cocktails. I never remember one person jumping on another person because they said something that conflicted with their own beliefs. I'm sure those people represented the entire political spectrum, and yet we enjoyed our conversations and laughed often. Some readers of this newsletter think that they know it all. They have all the answers. They are right, and those who disagree with them are wrong. They have what the late motivational speaker Zig Ziglar used to call hardening of the attitudes. The thing is, if you think about it, the people who verbally assault are almost all good people. Mom and dad to their kids, and grandma and grandpa to their grandkids. They are treasures to their friends. They go to church, they volunteer in their communities and do good deeds. And like you and me, they enjoy their RVs and lifestyle, and we're fortunate to lead. Their politics may be different. What's wrong with that? Isn't that our right in a democracy? Yet those mean spirit people can vent their anger, even hatred, when communicating online. Would they say the same thing if they were face to face? I doubt it. The internet has given everyone the power to share their views with hundreds, even thousands of others. All one needs is a computer or a smartphone. The person they attack is faceless, as are they. What has happened to some people that they are so disrespectful to others? Most of us are trying our best. We don't attack the next door neighbors for being different, but strangers, bombs away. Is it wrong? Is it wrong that we should say what we believe in hopes that in conversation or in writing that we can come to understand others' points of view? How do we ever learn, even grow, if we stop exploring ideas that conflict with our own? To those of you who respect others, who enjoy hearing others' opinions, you are to be treasured in today's angry world. I hope you remain part of this audience for as long as I can move my fingers across the keyboard. Chuck, end quote. So that's what he's saying, and he's saying what we're saying. The trolls are out there, these internet parasites, and here's what's happened, Rick. The Ron Gibson channel on YouTube used to carry Alex Jones. Ron Gibson would put Alex Jones every day, his broadcast, on the Ron Gibson channel, commercials removed. With my permission, he did the same for USA Prepares, and he did the same for Mike Rivero. Alex Jones got banned from YouTube, so now it's just Mike Rivero and USA Prepares. USA Prepares used to get beat up every day by the same parasites, every day, just trashing us. Well, Ron Gibson took down the comments. Comments were disabled. Mike Rivero got a case of the hiccups, had it for days, and they would call him a drunk. They would call him Mickey Mensa, the drunk, on and on and on. I'm paraphrasing. Now, the comments are banned. That's where we are. That's where we are with just a few parasites. I'd love to hear your comments when we come back. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us, Senior USA Prepares Instructor, physicist. Rick, I read an article on rvtravel.com, and the reason I read that and the reason that I mentioned that the comments section on Ron Gibson's YouTube channel that carries the What Really Happened by Mike Rivero and USA Prepares, both have had the comments disabled because people are so mean. Exactly what the editor Chuck Woodbury said in his article of March 29th, 2019. Do you have any comments about that?
No, I will not ever participate in politics for any amount of money because it is not about truth. It's about control. And control, from my understanding of things, is a fantasy. The Lord pretty much has something in mind, and while we want to think differently, we don't even understand what space and time are, for criminy's sake. This is nuts. Control is a fantasy from a psychological point of view, which I am now trying to integrate into physics. And physics was a leading religion of the world. More people believed in science than any other god, and it's wrong, just like religion is wrong. It isn't like that, and that's a limitation of man. And so when you start talking about politics, trying to control things, that's like trying to control other people, not yourself. And, it doesn't make any sense for me. I'm a spiritual man, and spirituality is not what you do, but how you do it, the quality in which you go at your personal pursuit. And truth isn't real. And I don't care what anybody thinks when I'm saying that. Truth is different for each of us because of our values and our belief systems. And those are arbitrary. If you'd been born in Iraq, you would not be a Christian, as an example. Now, how does that work? That means that everybody that was born in Iraq is going to hell? That's not right. And that's not right. That's one of the reasons why my parents, not me, were atheists. And I was raised like that. My mom was Indochina theater, so I saw a different side of things. And spirituality, I've seen saints and people that were Hindu. So I don't know. I don't understand any of this politics part. I wish no part of it. And right now I'm getting old enough. I don't want to have much more to do with any of this earth. I'm fed up with everybody. I have got so many creepy things going on in my life right now, and I'm starting to see things that I can't trust anybody. I trust you. You and Sandy are possibly some of the most finest. Don't get me started. I'm witnessing just every moment. Happy Halloween. What I'm going to go do is get naked. It's a non-burn day. I'm going to build a big campfire anyway, and I'm going to go leap across it, just like my ancestors did. Hoorah.
You mentioned the word politics, and I was thinking, what is that? So I just came up with a definition. I just kind of jotted this down as you were describing your thoughts.
I'm being tyrant.
Here's what so I wrote politics. Promising to take things from everyone and give them to certain people for the politician's own personal gain. Meaning, a politician will take from everybody. We'll call it taxes. We'll call it confiscation. We'll call it eminent domain. They'll take things and promise special favors to other people for which the politicians gain personally.
Who is the last statesman you know? One that was doing it for the country. Who could you name?
Patrick. Yeah, I can. Patrick Henry, John Randolph. Yeah.
I always like Harry Truman. The buck stops here, and that's Harry Truman, last statesman. I don't think we've had a president that was worthy of being president since him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I got to meet Nixon. I went into the Oval Office once a week for almost a 2-year period. I was part of that advisory board thing, and that's one of the reasons Gore and Van Zandt. Van Zandt is the one that did the, what's that project? Anyway, Tony Van Zandt was there's a little group of scientists we know each other and respect that are real scientists and trying to do the right thing. And now I'm realizing that science doesn't have the answers. It is a way of many ways of approaching something. I particularly like this one post where, there's not going to be any disaster in the earth because the God told Noah there would be no more floods. I forget that exact quote. I can't believe it. And that's that. Jesus said it. I believe it, and that's that. Boom.
Mm-hmm.
I can't be there. I can't know everything, but I can tell you the truth is that reality. Reality is that which cannot be known. Like when you see a fence and you say it's brown, you're making an assumption that the other side of that fence is the same color. It isn't.
Right,
that is
true.
a metaphor of the limitation of science and man itself. You can only know one part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And by definition, God is that which cannot be known. You can experience him, but you can't know him. And that's that. So when they say, I know Jesus or something, I wasn't there. Maybe I was. I might have been his brother, Simon, up on the cross.
Rick, I've got an amusing story to tell the class. So last night for dinner, our son arrived home, and he was at a convention, and he spent a couple thousand miles going there and coming back, and so he was at this very specific type of convention, and he stayed at hotels, during his travels, and on the way back, he checked into this hotel, and was getting ready to go to bed, and there was this noise from the room above him. So he called the front desk. Now, we're talking about this at dinner. So if you're wondering if the apple falls far from the tree, well, maybe you'll get a chance to see if it does or does not. So he called the front desk, and he says, hey, I want you to change my room. There's some homos above me, and they're making all kinds of noise. And the front desk guy says, you can't know that. And our son says, oh, yes, I can. How do you know that? Because one of them yelled out, who's your daddy? And he says, I want my room changed. And the front desk says to him, this is true. I'm not making this up. The front desk says, we're full up, quote unquote. We're full up. Can't move you. And he says, I want you to call them and tell them to knock it off. And he says, the front desk says, no, I can't do that. So my son says, yes, you can. Yes, you can, because here's what's going to happen. One of these three things is going to happen. Number one, you're going to move me to another room. Number two, you're going to call them and tell them to knock it off, and they're going to knock it off. Or number three, when I check out, I'm going to call my credit card company, and I'm going to dispute this charge, and you won't get paid for the room. Pick one. And the guy says, all right, I'll call him up. So I just couldn't resist telling you the story, but that's true. Absolutely true. So, and you know the boys, and you know our boys. You can imagine one of them doing that, can't you?
Yeah, I can. I can just see it in my mind's eye.
But see, Rick, that's where we are today.
It's unbelievable, and it's unfortunate because there's a whole bunch of people that really want to try to do the right thing and are willing to even compromise to do the right thing. But at what cost? And that's why you have militia.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
You
that's
have
why.
neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you have gated neighborhoods, lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
And politics. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Scientists say, Rick, that the sea is going to continue rising, and that the information that we used from the satellite-based predictions are wrong, and that more people, about 3 times as many people, will be hit by high rising shorelines by 2050. 300 million, they're saying.
Yeah, that's a fact. That's a fact because, number one, the Earth is expanding. Now, if the Earth is expanding, that means that the water's going to fall. The whole thing is so complicated because, in terms of landmass, et cetera. There is, I posted just a few minutes ago, this effect of the Earth flipping in its rotation and how that works. This is a film that NASA put together as because of a wobble. Now, I first encountered this when I played tennis. I hit that ball so hard that I could have it clocked at 112 miles an hour on a tennis ball. And when it hit the court, it would go off to the right. I put spin on it. Now, that's where it's called the tennis racket theorem. And tennis racket theorem. And later was named after a Russian cosmonaut that saw from space the Earth as not being round. It's got mass variations around it. And because of that, when it spins, there's a variety of other things, but it causes the Earth to wobble. And that wobble, at some point, has a factor in it, a third factor, that causes the whole thing to flip at X. And boom, it flips over. And this has been well known and documented for a long period of time. And guess what? The rising water part is part of this theorem on how this is all going to work, because normal theory would say the water will recede because the Earth is expanding. The Earth is actually 1/3 larger today than it was during Noah. How do they know that? They drop plugs in Antarctica and other places, and they can see the history. Now, I don't understand all of it, and there are so many variables, it's literally impossible to calculate exactly. But I can tell you, just from what's happening from our sun, we're going to have an event in our lifetime. And people, even my age, I'm going to probably end up witnessing something. And that's a good word, witnessing it. And that is what the biblical concept is about, being a witness.
Hold that thought. Dr. Richard Allen Milner's with us. Rick, did you want to continue your comments about the Earth and the water level rising and centrifugal
there's going
force?
to be a series of different, unusual events that seem counter to our understanding of what's going on. Ice ages, the desalinization of the sea to cause ocean currents to have to reboot. Now, it's all a complex, simple. What I did is I put a single video up from NASA this morning showing how a wobble will. When I played tennis, I had a coach. I was so fortunate in undergraduate school that I ended up playing Davis Cup. I ended up playing with Arthur Ashe as his doubles partner. I played with Gretchen Vosters, one of the DuPont girls, a Marion Cricket Club and things like that. I was a good tennis player. I had a tennis ball that when I hit that son of a gun, I hit it so hard that it drove that ball right down into the court. But when it had such spin on it, it would, when it hit the court, it would go off to your left, which means instead of having a forehand stroke, there now had to be a backhand stroke to get it. And I blew me away. If I could get to the net and I hit that overhead, they could never take me. I was like that good. And hard tennis. And I watched that physics of how that worked. That was called the tennis racket theorem. And now has been witnessed by cosmonauts in space. You can actually see the Earth wobble. It's not round, it's oval. And the reason it's oval is that underneath the Earth, there's solid mass here, and there's caves there. And if you go way down into the Earth, and we're talking about, putting lodestones over here and over there, cause the Earth at some point to no longer be a round sphere. It's not round. It's not flat either, by the way. But it's now come in the middle. It's got all kinds of weird things going on. and with molten core and the other kinds of theories that we have. That's a good word to use, theory, because you can't prove it. Well, you can try, but, with limited, you start with definitions. And that's where you limit your universe right out of the gate. The fence brown or green? Correct answer is yes. You say, it's shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. You can prove the Earth's round. But if its space is curved, it's simply you can prove it's flat. Now, which one is it? Well, space isn't real. It's a construct. And so with that said, it has limitations in physics. And that's that. And with that, the Earth, is it real? Or is it imaginary in our mind because we're asleep? And the correct answer to that one is yes. It's both. Not real. And that's why astrology became astronomy and then evolved into cosmobiology with biorhythms and your relationship to spin. It's interesting concepts. And I know that there probably is never going to ever be a correct theory of everything. So, why? Because imagination rules. And there's, it's like in that Indiana Jones, anything goes.
Rick, I think that the Earth would assume the shape that many middle-aged divorced women shape has assumed.
I look like a pear.
Well, I was thinking like a big bulge around the equator. Yeah.
Yeah, or she's got back. That's more accurate. That's why she spins and wobbles. It's not exactly circular or oval either.
But seriously, we do have centrifugal force. The Earth is rotating on its axis. Now,
so everything has a tendency to want to move, but it's plastic. That's the other part of it. Parts of the Earth are plastic. It's so high molten core that the metal has now turned to plastic, a totally different element that we have not yet actually discussed or studied because we've never had temperatures that high like the sun.
So Rick, seriously, if the Earth is getting a little larger around the waist, okay, wouldn't that would mean that the Earth is rising above sea level, which means that the oceans would tend to rise in other areas.
Yes, that is now you're correct. That is correct.
Okay, so it's absolutely clear that Florida, the coast of Florida, the coast of New York City, England, London, wherever the land is low, where it meets the ocean, toast.
You want to hear one weird one before you go? The sea between Australia and Antarctica is mostly deuterium. That's why they mine it there.
Okay, let's talk more about that when we come back. Dr. Richard Allen Miller is with us. Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Dr. Richard Allen Miller is with us. If you'd like to go to his website, richardallenmiller.com, Richard A-L-A-N Miller, M-I-L-L-E-R.com. That's where you can peruse his offerings, his writings, his books. And you can find out what he's got to say about lots of things. He's truly one of our brilliant instructors. He's a senior USA Prepares instructor, richardallenmiller.com. Rick, you're talking about deuterium mining. Would you continue, please?
Well, the sea, that the South Seas down there between Australia, actually it's New Zealand and Antarctica, is almost pure deuterium. Now, that's because of the wobble and the way water behaves in certain kinds of spin form. And that's why they mine it there. Deuterium is not that uncommon. It's everywhere. And in your drinking water, everything. And at some point, you take, just like they're going to do with CBDs and other things, there's going to be some new technologies using spin or centrifuges rather than extraction processes like CO2. And I'm going to predict that deuterium is going to have a secondary effect on what happens with the sea in terms of ocean currents and how it's going to affect land masses. And nothing around any coastal area is going to be safe, because look what a 3-foot tsunami did to Fukushima. And that was only a 3-footer, not a 100-footer like in the day after tomorrow when the ship floats in between the buildings. A capsized ship, I might add, not a ship, a capsized one that turned upside down. I have been in rough seas and 30-foot water, going out in the outer straits of Juan de Fuca, sailing to Alaska. I've been there and I've done that in that kind of a sea. And let me tell you, the thing that makes water so weird is that it does not compress, which means you have complete transfer of the energy from one side to the other. And why water is possibly one of the more dangerous elements, not an element, a molecule, is because it does not compress. And you have complete transfer of the energy. And when you have a flood or a tidal wave, I mean, you got to be right on that one at sea, or you're down there with Davy Jones.
And isn't that why water is used for fracking? Because it does not compress?
Well, then there it is. That's one of many applications that we're now finding out. And there are phases of water. You know, we talk about the fourth phase of water, gee whiz, H3O2. And then there's Mars, that has liquid water at minus 100, near absolute zero. And I mean, we're getting down there. Cold, yeah, and water behaves differently. And we're going to discover all molecules change. And that's why there are going to be multiple periodic charts in our new physics, because everything changes with boundary conditions. And the Earth is, we don't have a clue what we're doing. We're just newbies, and we think we're really it because we have space flight. And watch how the dolphin and the orca do it. They live in that sea. I did a dive. My first dive, when I was now A-rated, was at 100 feet for 4 hours. It was a world record. And I had to get, both eardrums were shattered. It took me 2.5 days to decompress. Just 100 feet down for 4 hours.
Rick, 100 feet down, I got to tell you, when I was a child, I'd swim and dive down to the 8-foot bottom. Going to 10 feet was like way different from 8 feet. Going 12 feet was extreme on the ears. There
you go. And there are life forms that live down in the Mariana Trench. And you can't even imagine. And that's just shallow compared to the depth of the Earth and how things change. And when I was in Antarctica, when I saw the Nazi base and the Viking base, there was a hole, a perfectly circular hole that went straight down into the mantle, 100 miles. And there was, how can they do that? It was obviously done with a technology we don't have any. In the 70s, we had no way to go down that and explore it. Hovercraft, that kind of thing. This was in the 70s now. And I saw artifacts that we have technology now, like fullerenes, that are 100 times stronger than diamond. But back in those days, I didn't know about fullerenes. I was working with Buckminster Fuller in the first understandings of things, and yet I had an artifact. I fired a 50 caliber cannon at it. This was at the University of Chicago in the vault, and then went in with an electron microscope to look at lattice damage, and there was zero lattice damage. The material collapsed around the bullet, the ordnance, and then flowed like water back into it. So it had memory, electrophoretic. Okay, so then I started, oh man, I have seen things that we don't have. Was that from alien technology or was that from a previous epoch? I don't know. They never, ever, even at my level of clearance, ever gave me full disclosure. I had vaults I could go into, but, that's why they separate vaults. This knowledge from that. That's how they do that. They got another level of plausible deniability and politics. Did you see that article I just sent you? Shining light on
no.
sociopaths and politics? Oh, man. And right now today they've started those proceedings against Trump. And you know what?
Mm-hmm.
That's all BS. Yeah, Trump's a buffoon. Yes. So are the Democrats. And it's just, I want no part of politics. It's crazy. And that was, all that money came from my Social Security. That's not right.
There are a lot of people, Rick, who, I talk to a lot of people. I haven't met anyone yet recently who says, everything's peachy. Everything is just great. Even the GDP feels something is really wrong and going bad wrong in a big way.
And you know what? That's why TV and Netflix is doing Designated Survivor and now Hit List. Just check out Hit List. Jeez. I mean, it's leaving my mouth open in disbelief because if Hollywood is doing it, she would if she could. That's where it all starts. Once you see it, it's not only true, it's much worse.
Rick, you mentioned, I'm just going back to the Mariana Trench. That thing is pretty darn deep. It's like 36,000 feet deep. That's huge. It's really deep.
And that's why the Earth wobbles, one of the reasons. There's mass.
Right, because it's not...
mass distribution is weird.
Right, because water has different mass than granite versus limestone versus...
a big picture. And so it's not round like it looks like. It's got wobble structure to it like an asteroid.
And so here's what I've been thinking about while we've been discussing this. So at 36,000 feet depth, there's a column of water on top of the bottom of the trench. 36,000 feet of water weighing down on the bottom of the trench. That is about 15,000, almost 16,000 pounds per square inch, if you calculate it out. That's huge. I don't know if man, and I don't know this, if man has ever created anything that can withstand 15,000 or 16,000 PSI. Have we? That's a lot of pressure. I mean, I know that my hydraulic system on the tractor, the hoses are rated at 5,000 PSI, and that's a lot. Those are extra duty.
Of carbon that are now being used in things like bicycles and motorcycles with their monofilament carbon. It thin layers of atoms of carbon that are 10 to 1,000 times stronger than diamond, fullerene. And it's the molecule. And those nanofibers are being put in everything. And interestingly, if you put deuterium inside it, what you have now is a Star Trek thing where the bad Captain Kirk can dial up anybody that's got that nanofiber in it, and there are no forensics like aircraft. They can be nothing to find. And that's Building 7, and the way that steel beam came down and turned to vapor.
So I was thinking, Rick, about what has man done that works with pressure, that can sustain a lot of pressure? And I came up with a different answer. What has man done that can't sustain a lot of pressure, cannot sustain a lot of pressure? That's what bombs are for. bombs are to create pressure so great that the devices that we make cannot withstand that pressure, and boom, they explode.
And you can shape them so that the thing is shape explosion, so that you can have it go this way, not that way.
And that's what the Panzerfaust was for. At the end of World War II, the German people were given these like broom handles, and on the end was a shaped charge, and all you do is point it at a tank, and that shaped charge, when it goes off and hits the tank, it'll destroy the side of the tank and kill everybody in the tank. Yes, we've got Steve Elkins calling in from Florida. Welcome, Steve.
Hey, you guys are moving so fast through the topics. I'm not sure I'm on topic anymore now, but actually I'll make a comment on the World Trade Center, the Building 7 too also. But you were talking about what we see is not the reality, and then what we're being told, and talking about the economy. And it was on RBN last week. There was an article showing pretty much a really sparse stadium, a sports stadium for a football game, and well, that's a good indicator right there that people don't have the disposable income to pay the high ticket prices to go watch these professional sporting events. These arenas, they're not full. They're not full, and that's disposable income. If people have it, they'll spend it on a sports ticket. Instead, they're probably just watching it on TV and saying, I'll just watch it from here.
Didn't they build a mall that they're now not sure if people are going to use it? I saw that yesterday.
Yes, that's in the Garden State, or the former Garden State, New Jersey.
They built this huge mall, and now they're not sure anybody's going to use it because...
Yeah, second largest in the country, and they're talking about having ice skating in there and all kinds of rides inside the mall. We'll be right back. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us. Steve Elkins is joining us via telephone. And Steve mentioned how Americans are spending or not spending their money. Specifically, stadiums are not being filled because people don't have the discretional income. However, people, Steve, are still eating out at record rates. So it looks like if you want to know what people are spending their money on, you just throw laziness into the question. You say, what are the things that they can do if they're really lazy, and that's what they spend their money on?
Yeah, I totally agree. It's amazing how much money Americans will waste on eating out. I mean, geez, you think about it. If you add it up in 1 month, think about how much food you could actually buy and put in your refrigerator for the amount that you went out to spend in a restaurant. It is amazing, and you're going to get better quality food, and you're going to actually know how it was prepared because, like you and I, we agree, I don't trust those people in the back. They drop things, they sneeze, they cough on something, and, I'm not trying to be a germaphobe, but I do know people in the industry, and they tell me the horror stories how things happen. I don't want to be part of that. So, but, today, Vince and I received a flyer today that is already advertising Black Friday, which they are trying to get the spin going here to get people on board. If the economy is strong, don't believe it. Anybody talks negative that the economy is not strong. It is strong. Get out there and start spending some money. We will see another poor retail Christmas year. This will be 4 or 5 in a row. And in 2020, we will see more store closures. So, well, the question would be is how can you possibly spin this lie of a strong, robust economy when you have corporations, businesses shutting their doors in the new year and poor Christmas sales? So, you can throw all these phony numbers at me. 3.3% unemployment, 3.5% unemployment, job creation. Forget about telling us what the job loss was. Just tell us the job creation, and you're still in the negative on that. We got to open our eyes. We got to see what really is going on here, and we have to, kind of think of the government as that cheating ex-wife. The reason you got rid of her because she lied and cheated on you, and that's the way I look at this government: a lying, cheating ex-wife.
Steve, there are 183 stores have closed this year. In terms of shops, it looks like 12,000 shops are going to close. I'm talking about corporations. 183 large store-type corporations have closed. You're absolutely right. The numbers lie. We can't trust anything that the government corporation tells us. Not one thing. Not one thing. And I mentioned the best garden hose to buy is the Sears Craftsman Lifetime Rubber Garden Hose, the one that goes below zero and above 100 degrees in terms of the temperature it can withstand. But don't buy it based on a lifetime guarantee because you won't have it, in my opinion. I'm with you.
Another thing
I'm
to bring up
absolutely
real quick here is economy that is strong doesn't require quantitative easing and plunge protection pumped in on a daily basis. And that is being done on a daily basis to keep the markets stable. Now, that's not necessary if you actually have a consumer-driven stock market. That's not necessary. But that's exactly what's going on, quantitative easing and plunge protection money, your tax dollars being shoved into the market for high-end traders to artificially inflate their stock to keep people thinking that the market is strong and buying into the market. That isn't necessary with a really true strong economy, and that's what's going on right now.
I remember
the blacklist thing I saw last night. I'm just getting into blacklist. Was him giving Reddington was giving? I think it was one of the Latin American countries are things to counterfeit as much money as he needs. Latest from the government. Here it is. Go print as much money.
Rick, why don't you also add to your list The Walking Dead? The Walking Dead.
I will. That's probably all of these things are going to happen because we all can see them now in our mind's eye. That's what makes it real. And we have a responsibility to the thoughts we choose to entertain.
When we come back, Steve, if you can stay with us a little bit, you just moved out of California. You have some experience with the area that's been on fire. I'd like to talk about the California wildfires and the cheese graters. Just a side comment, class. If you got a chance to hear the, I think, one of the finest commercials ever written and produced, it was the one you just heard about. We want pizza tonight. And the man responsible for that is a USA Prepares instructor. His name is Ron Allen. And if you listen to that commercial, and if you listen to the USA Prepares introduction and outroduction, you will hear his voice. So he is the same guy that did that, and that's over 8 years ago that he did it. And I think he did a great job, which is why I haven't changed the introduction and outroduction for USA Prepares, because he did such a good job the first time. And We Want Pizza Tonight is another one of his creations. So I was thinking about asking him to join us, in the next month or so, and let's do the anatomy of what the heck is going on with commercials on radio, because some of them, and I'm not talking about his, are absolutely awful. Gentlemen, Rick Miller and Steve Elkins, California wildfires. I lived in California for 18 months. That's all I could take with Mrs. Finelli. And I was watching this video of the fire and people who were trapped. And here's what happened. So the grasses were on fire. People were on one side of the divided highway, and they wanted to get across the median to get out of the way. And the government corporation put up a fence in the median so you could not do that. If there were a massive collision, a pileup, you're stuck. You can't get out of the way. In Missouri, if there were a tornado ahead of you, you can't turn around, because these buffoons who work for the Department of Transportation in the various states put these things up, and they say they save lives. But I saw the video where people were trapped. The fire was coming at them fast and furious. They could not get across the median to get to safety because there was a chain link fence there. Now, fortunately for them, it was a chain link fence and not a cheese grater like we have in Missouri. Missouri, we have these aircraft cables that you cannot drive through. You can't go over them. You can't go around them. You can't go through them. But if it's a chain link fence, that's not so bad because all you need is a pair of pliers. And you just bend the tab at the top, you bend the tab at the bottom, and then you unscrew one vertical kinked piece of chain link fabric. And that's how you can put rolls and rolls together and make it seem seamless, because that's how they put them together. They thread them together, they weave them together, and they bend the top and bottom tabs over, and that's it. Well, with a pair of pliers, you can unbend those tabs and unscrew it and take the fence apart and drive through it. So here's my question for you, Steve. You lived on the left coast. You lived in California. What do you know about those cheese grater types or fence types that would prevent people from getting out of harm's way? Have you seen them?
Actually, I have not, because I left before the first fires. I'd moved down to Florida actually 1 week after I sold my house. The fires came through in 2017, and my only person in the field there, actually two people. I had Paul Preston in there, who from Agenda 21 Radio. He and I were on the phone quite a bit. Actually, Orlean Kurla, also the Eagle Forum president for the state of California, and then Ron McDonald were my only sources of what's going on out there at the time. And pretty much the media gave us what they wanted to give us, and not all the truth, certainly not the facts. I did find out some really interesting things here, that especially on this newest one that just happened, because this actually is in my neighborhood now. I do not know if my house that I sold is going to survive. Now, if you saw where I lived, you'd say, well, this is impossible. This neighborhood to burn down. You're not in the middle of a forest. You're not surrounded by a lot of vegetation. We do have vineyards on the outskirts, but you would say there's no way. My cousin used to call me and said, the fires. I said, no, we don't worry about fires here. I don't live in the redwoods. If I lived in the redwoods, I would be worried, but not where I live. But now these people have all been evacuated. I have not spoken to my neighbor in 2 days down the street from me. She's living in a hotel. Texted her last night to see what's the status of the neighborhood. I have not heard back from her in 2 days, and she's been very consistent to give me information and talk on the phone. But she has not contacted me or told me in 2 days what is going on with the neighborhood. So, but what I did find out from Paul Preston was the week prior to the fires. Now, these fires, these people say, oh, you're crazy thinking this. And I'm not. I can prove it. Paul Preston can prove it. There's a lot of active spraying going on in California. Geoengineering is huge. Dane Whittington up in Redding will tell you. He'll show you the evidence of what's going on. Now, it used to be that when they sprayed, they used to actually have external tanks on aircraft. That's gone. That's the old technology. New technology is now that the chemicals are actually mixed in the gasoline or JP4 jet fuel, and it actually comes out in the exhaust. There was heavy spraying the week before these fires hit the second time in this last week. Heavy spraying the week before. And I can also tell you, talking to other people in the field, people like Deborah Tavares, who's very knowledgeable on smart meters, there is a connection with the smart meters and all these fires. And let me explain how this all works. You go back to the internet, you can find the video still on YouTube, where Donald Rumsfeld, back in 1993, is talking about, he's asked a question about direct energy weapons. Do you have them? He says, we do have it. It's not perfected yet. That was back in 1993. Now, if you understand these smart meters, these electronic boxes on the side of your house, which many people have not refused, or they just turned around and they're there. I turned around and it was already installed at my house. I was at work, so I came home and no, not even an update to say, hey, would you allow this or not? There was no choice given. You can refuse, opt out now, but there's a charge for that. But what we did find out is that everybody who had a smart meter and people who did not have smart meter people actually had fires. Their houses were burned down. Let me give you an example where my friend Orlean lives, surrounded by a lot of houses all around her. They all had smart meters. She did not have a smart meter. She refused the smart meter. Their houses all burned to the ground. We're talking a house next door burned to the ground. Her house remains standing, not a scratch on it. Now, these things can be shorted out by a direct energy weapon. That's a fact. They can do that. This is the technology they have. So I'm saying with Agenda 21 and ICLEI, if you look up these two agendas, they're very similar. Sustainability, forcing people out of rural areas. These fires are purposeful. They are intended. Between flooding, they're creating flooding with cloud seeding, and they're using these smart meters and other technology to core out California. Now, when I talked to Paul Preston, he's working on a new project here in California. It's called the New State California, or New California State Initiative. They are going to try to split the state in two, like Virginia, West Virginia. And what's the reason they want to do so is because Southern California is dragging down the state financially, because probably all the illegals. They want to split the state in two. So it's quite ironic that what Paul is fighting to save, the territory he's saving for the new state of California, the division, is all being burned up. What a coincidence that the territory he's trying to save to start over California will be separate from Southern is all being torched and burned up.
Going to give that part of California to China, because China has, like in Grants Pass, where I live up just north, they own 50% right now of Grants Pass, Oregon. And I'm not talking about our timber either.
Right. Yeah. This is all part of ICLEI and Agenda 2030, Agenda 21, bringing people out of the rural areas. They're going to make sure that they can't go back to rebuild, either through high insurance, their insurance companies won't insure you, or they'll make it so out of reach you can't afford to build there, or somebody in the past, what they've done, another little slick trick, is they simply throw down a lizard and say it's a rare species and now it's a sanctuary, so you can't live there anyway. They're finding every reason to force people out of these rural areas. People who can't be touched because they're away from civilization here are harder to control. And this is about controlling people, forcing them down to the center. Of course, then you've got the mass transit systems that are being put in place because, well, you're not supposed to have a car in the future. You're supposed to be on the shuttle here going everywhere you want to go. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Steve, let's go right into...
Paradise was a smart meter that went unstable, and then it set off 10,000 smart meters that also went unstable. And as a physicist, I'm going to state that bandwidth is more toxic than detonating a nuclear warhead in the ionosphere.
Rick, let's stay with science.
A nuclear winter, the kind of which, with smart meters, I think they are an end game weapon, potentially.
Let's stay with science here for just a second, Rick. So, thermite is made with a combination of aluminum and iron oxide dust. And thermite,
1 less temperature to cause steel to vaporize. That's a plasma. There's only one thing in the universe that'll cause a steel or slagging, like you see in Paradise. The slag that a glass and steel is from plasma. And you got to get a temperature up that big. I'm about to chase a turkey off my porch where I'm eating birds. I've got wild turkeys that come up second floor. Sorry, I just chased them out.
So Rick, here's the point. Here's the point. If we are spraying, we know that aluminum dust is being sprayed. Okay, we know that. If we believe that iron oxide is added to that, then we have the two ingredients for thermite. And you can look this up on the internet class. It's no big deal. It's no secret. It's common. I'm at an educational website that says this is what it's made out of. And what I'm saying is, if thermite materials have been sprayed on in the air to land on the ground, and then we have a fire, isn't it logical that we'd have these highly exothermic reactions where we'd have these fires that burn everything in sight, and the firemen say, "Wow, I've never been in a fire this hot."
Yeah, that's what they say.
Vincent, you're about the same age. You remember as a kid? Do you remember the tinsel they used to sell you for Christmas to put on your Christmas tree? Remember we used to sprinkle it all over, and then later on, for some reason there were a lot of fires, and the Christmas lights would short out, and you'd have all these fires. That's essentially what you're looking at here. These trees are coated with aluminum. They've been spraying. They got a layer on them. These things are going to burn hot, and they're going to spread, and embers are going to fly. These things are cooking hot because of the aluminum coating from spraying. Same way as that tinsel on that old Christmas tree back in the old days.
Man, that's the analogy that I've been trying to draw.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think you did.
Steve Elkins, we've got Robert in Kansas on hold. I'm going to see you tomorrow at USA Prepares Hour number 1, right?
Got it. See you then.
Yeah, see you then. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us, richardallenmiller.com, richardalanmiller.com. That's where you can find his writings, his books, and buy them right there on the Internet. Robert in Kansas has been patiently waiting. Welcome, Robert.
Hey, good morning, Vincent. I was just wondering if you and Dr. Miller both said that you think the sea level is going to rise.
Absolutely.
Okay.
With respect to the Earth, yes.
Okay, so somewhere like Florida, which has one of the fastest growing beachfront, condominium developments in the world, the people who build those things, invest in them, finance them, use the debt for the banks. They're building these things, and there is no account for the ocean rising. They're just like in London, or in England, they loan out just like a 30, 40-year mortgage. You can still get those in England. What I'm saying is that the financial institutions of the world, they know that those investments are not in jeopardy the way that the climate change, sea level rise.
Robert, are you saying are you saying that the investment village is all-knowing and doesn't make mistakes, and why in heaven's name would they permit the expansion and the dollars going into the structures on the coast? Because if they did, they would never allow those funds to be lent out. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that the people who actually know what's going on know that it's nonsense. If you look at Barack Obama just bought a mansion at Martha's Vineyard, it's literally about 10 feet above sea level. These people know that it's not going to happen, and yet it's a hysteria. They have pictures 150 years ago of harbors in Sydney where the sea hasn't risen 1 centimeter. It hasn't moved at all. And it's just, they're not accounting for it. There's no insurance for it. In the prospectus, when you're investing, it doesn't say in there if climate change were to happen, this investment is worth nothing. It doesn't say that for a reason, because they know it's not going to happen.
Robert, seriously, I think you're pulling my leg, because the money people, the people behind the concept of money, have invested in Macy's, which is closing stores, Nordstrom, which is closing stores, Target, also pronounced Target, closing stores, Kohl's, closing stores, Lord & Taylor, an institution where my mother used to buy my clothes when I was a child. Yeah, okay, Robert, what I'm saying is I have been thinking for years, these people are dumb as a box of rocks to be expanding. Sports Authority, bankrupt. They're building buildings like crazy, expensive buildings, stores. And I'm thinking, these guys don't know that we're in the second Great Depression. So I'm telling you that from my vantage point, that just because people are financiers doesn't mean they know much. For example, my neighbor was telling me that his property, his bank told him his property was not worth very much because of where it's located. He would be better off with a city property. That's a banker telling him this. That banker is a jerk. There's nothing better than farmland compared to city land. Now, maybe if the economy keeps bumping along with the lies and the cash infusions and injections and stimuli, yeah, okay, maybe for a while the city properties will be worth more. The market won't collapse as soon as if they stopped injecting liquidity. I'm telling you that I look at business people who are supposed to be all and know-alls, and they're really not so smart. They really aren't. Because if they were, Robert, they would have farmland to ride out the storm. They're in it for the dollar. And where I sit, I'm not going to help them. If my banker who keeps hitting me with all kinds of trying to charge me for all kinds of transactions that never used to exist, if that guy needs something to eat, geez, I'm all out. All out. So sorry. Don't have any. That's where I'm coming from. These guys don't know. They really don't know. Bankers are greedy people. Really greedy. And if you look at credit card interest rates, 29+%, how much more greedy can you get than that? So you trust those people? Is that what you're saying, Robert?
No, Vince, I'm not saying I trust them. I'm saying that they're not going to make those investments. You know, Barack Obama, he advocated for climate change and everything, but he bought that mansion. You know, I think they're just lying to us.
Whose money did he use? Was that his money or somebody else's? Rick, any quick comments?
I'm just unbelievable. You know, red herring. I'll spend $1 billion over here to misdirect you because I got $20 billion.
Yeah. Hey, Robert, thanks